Just put it under your tongue and rub it in your cheek. I think you're calmed down.
So quickly. The voice is coming back. Did you guys eat lunch?
Are you hungry now?
Funny I am. Yeah.
When you're young and healthy, you tend to think that life will be that way forever. But just like everybody else, you'll reach an age when health problems start to rear their ugly head. So hear me out on this, because just like Larry found the right plant for his condition, you'll discover yours in the next few minutes. Because somewhere in nature, there's a cure for whatever ails us. I'll show you the common plants growing in your own backyard that will replace your antibiotic pills, the common weeds that can numb your pain just like morphine, and the tourniquet plants that can stop your bleeding in minutes. You'll also discover the plants that work better than modern drugs to reverse joint damage from arthritis, safely lower your cholesterol, stabilize your blood sugars, turn the clock back on degenerative brain diseases, and a lot more. I'm also going to share with you the strange story of one of the greatest healers who's ever lived. You'll find out how you can make use of 3 of his most powerful remedies immediately. One for severe pain, one for life-threatening infections, and one that will greatly improve your quality of life from this day forth. And the last one will totally take you by surprise. This man had desperate people in front of his house day and night hoping to find relief after conventional medicine had failed them. The lines were so long that one time the police even had to disperse them as they were blocking traffic on the street. Now, I've seen people whose doctors have given them no more than 6 months to live, who after following his treatment are still alive and well more than 20 years later. And I know all this because I was there, and this man was my grandfather. The first remedy that I'm going to show you is called angry bear paw, which my grandfather used to treat wounded and dying American soldiers on the battlefield. You'll probably want to keep some close at hand, especially if you're over 40. My grandfather's story began during the Great Depression, when he became an orphan. Now, luckily, he was adopted by Ayanna, a Native American woman from whom he learned his first medicinal plants and remedies. Before long, my grandfather could name thousands of edible and medicinal weeds. He knew where to find them, when to harvest them, and how to turn them into powerful remedies. He'd scribble everything down in his plant notebook, which he kept by his side until his death. By the beginning of World War II, he was already known as a gifted healer in the community. And during the bloody battle for Pétion, his division converted a French church into a makeshift hospital. By nightfall, it was full of hundreds of wounded young Americans. And when the surgeons ran out of morphine, it was my grandfather who gave the soldiers relief. He had angry bear paw with him, which is a powerful pain-killing extract that he made from this plant. Now, I'm sure you've seen it in your backyard, too. My grandfather would rush from soldier to soldier and put a small vial of the extract to their lips. In a short time, the loud groans and cries subsided, to the amazement of all the Army surgeons. Now, he wasn't a medic, but after seeing how well his remedies worked, they let him do his job. And by the end of the war, every man in the 8th Infantry Division knew him as Dr. Davis. And since then, that's what people called him. Every June, my grandfather would gather the leaves of this very common plant, which is called wild lettuce. The milky substance is where the potency of this plant lies. My grandfather would grind and boil the leaves until he got a brown substance, like this. Then you need to strain it and leave the liquid on low heat for another 2 to 3 hours until it becomes gluey and dark. Now, sometimes it can take almost 4 to 5 hours. The Comanche natives called this powerful extract angry bear paw, and that's because the warriors who drank it before battle could endure and keep fighting despite heavy wounds, just like an angry mother bear. Now, the second remedy that I'll show you was known as Logman's Mending Fur, and it brought me back from the brink of death, and it might just do the same for you one day. I should have died in the summer of 1990, just before the Berlin Wall fell and the world woke up with new hopes. I had checked in for a routine lower back surgery, but in the process I ended up catching a deadly antibiotic-resistant bacteria, Staphylococcus aureus. Over 500,000 Americans get this bacterial infection each year, some after simple procedures or short hospital stays, and 50,000 of them end up paying the ultimate price. It's an unforgiving disease, and it's getting worse with each passing year as resistance to synthetic antibiotics increases. And although the doctors tried many of those, the infection wasn't backing down. If anything, my condition was getting worse, to the point of having uncontrollable muscle seizures. Now, the problem was that until they found the right antibiotic, the bacteria could have killed me. You've probably been worried about your own health from time to time, but I don't know if you've ever had a serious health problem yet, and I hope you haven't. But when you know you're running out of time, it doesn't matter how brave you are, it doesn't matter how old you are, it doesn't even matter how much you've accomplished in your life, and it doesn't matter how much you'll try to hide it from everyone. Inside, you, just like everyone else, will be afraid. And all my life I said to myself that in the face of death I will not flinch. But I did. With my family gathered around my soon-to-be deathbed, all I could see were the good years I would lose. You're never really ready to die. There's always a good reason to live, something that needs to be done. Maybe you want to see your grandsons settle in their homes or enjoy the retirement you've been waiting for such a long time. Maybe you want to pass on the valuable lessons you've learned in your life, or maybe you want to wake up in the morning and see one more beautiful sunrise. What this experience taught me is that good health has no price, and often we don't realize it until it's too late. My grandfather rushed to the hospital with his worn-out notebook, a bottle of vodka, and a bag of this plant, which is popularly known as log man's mending fir or old man's beard in some parts of America. Now, I'm sure you've seen it too, hanging from the dead trunks and tree branches. This plant contains usnic acid, which is probably the only substance found in nature that is known to fight gram-negative bacteria like Staphylococcus aureus better than most antibiotics. It was a gamble, but it was worth trying. My grandfather had ground 1 ounce of the plant and placed it in a jar. You need to add 5 ounces of vodka and then leave it on low heat for 2 hours. After you let it rest for another day, you should have your own medicine jar of log man's mending fir. It was called that because during the frontier period, whenever a log man cut himself accidentally, this is what he would put on the wound to stop the infection. Now, in my case, my grandfather poured 10 drops in a glass of water and let me drink it. After just 1 week of taking this medicine, I got better and left the hospital. Now, sadly, my grandfather passed away in 2001, but even in death, my grandfather taught me valuable lessons. And the third remedy that I'll show you was one that I learned 3 days after he passed on, and it was called red beak powder. At his funeral, around 5,000 people from all over the country came to pay their respects. Our small town of Springfield didn't have enough hotels to accommodate them, so everybody offered a place to stay. One of them was Mary, a 72-year-old lady from Texas, who told me what my grandfather did for her many years ago. She was suffering from high blood pressure, a condition that is becoming very common, especially among seniors today. And the medication was keeping her blood pressure and cholesterol under control, but it didn't cure her. She had to take drugs every day for the rest of her life. Mary told me that as the days passed, she was getting tired a lot easier without doing any more work than usual. And after a few months, her drugs had an effect she never anticipated. They caused life-threatening liver damage and brought her on the edge of cirrhosis. So please listen to this part very carefully, because if you're taking drugs regularly, then you are exhausting your liver. When you feel tired without any reason, it's usually the liver trying to tell you that it needs some rest. The liver was never intended to process the chemicals inside drugs. This is why most people who have been taking pills for a long time are drained of energy, which ought to be there to fight the disease. Now, pharmaceutical companies are not evil incarnate like some people think, but they're no charities either. Their drugs do work most of the time, yet they're usually designed to extract the maximum amount of money from their customers, from you. So, if they can treat the symptoms but not the root cause, then it's perfect, because they want to keep you hooked for life. But your liver and your wallet might not appreciate it. The doctor told Mary that she needed to cut the medication altogether. So her impossible choice was between dying from liver damage or risking a heart attack or stroke due to high blood pressure. That's when she heard about my grandfather, who prescribed her a little-known natural plaque remover that will melt away the deadly cholesterol deposits from your arteries, and less plaque, lower blood pressure. It's as simple as that. This powerful remedy is made from the berries of the hawthorn tree. Now, my grandfather would gather them in late October. Then you need to remove the seeds because they contain a very small amount of amygdalin, which can be dangerous in large doses. And after that, you need to add water and blend the mixture. Place the mix on a tray and let it dry at 200 degrees Fahrenheit with the oven door open, or use a dehydrator if you have one. You'll need to leave them for only 8 to 10 hours. My grandfather would dry them in the sun, but of course this took him days. The powder can be put in capsules or mixed with water and then taken orally for 2 months to completely cleanse your blood vessels. Now, with my grandfather's remedy, Mary stopped taking her blood pressure medication, and in a few months, her liver regenerated. The pioneers called the berries of this tree red beak because of the bird that often hid among them. But these 3 lost remedies are just the tip of the iceberg, because what I'm about to show you now will dwarf them in comparison. After my grandfather's funeral, I went to the house that had been my childhood paradise. His now empty room had one wall covered with pictures of me growing up. There was one from when my grandfather took me horseback riding for the first time, and one where he taught me how to shoot his rifle. Then another one from when we set up a big campfire to keep the wild boars from eating our crops. It didn't help. They still devastated our corn. But I surely enjoyed the large fire and the marshmallows we cooked that night. We were so happy back then. But that's when it really hit me for the first time, that I would never see or talk to my grandfather ever again. And what I'll miss most of all, by far, are the times when we would go out to harvest the plants he needed for his medicines. And sometimes he would even send me out alone after giving me just his notebook filled with drawings, and I'd always come back with a bag full of healing weeds. On his nightstand, I found exactly his incredibly worn-out notebook, the one he started with Ayanna during the Great Depression, the one that traveled with him during World War II and brought relief to American soldiers on the battlefield, the same notebook my grandfather brought with him when I had one foot in the grave, and the very same one that had helped save thousands of other people. Some of them had conditions so severe their own doctors didn't know what to do. They all showed up at our doorstep, desperate mothers with their children, hopeless seniors plagued by chronic pain, and even bedridden people brought by their relatives. I've seen them all. With my grandfather's passing, the world lost a great healer. My grandfather would never be able to help anyone anymore. But I decided his notebook will. That's why I edited his old notebook so that anyone can take advantage of my grandfather's most powerful remedies. Instead of his drawings, I added real color pictures of the plants so you can easily identify them. I also replaced his handwriting. At times it was difficult to make out, probably because some of the pages were written in the field and even in the midst of battle. But other than this, I left the information untouched. His manuscripts had stains of American blood from World War II on them, and I printed those too, exactly as I had found them. After months of work and spending a great deal of time and money, I had it published. In memory of my grandfather, I called it The Lost Book of Remedies. And here's just a glimpse of what you'll find in it. For every healing plant in my grandfather's Lost Book of Remedies, you'll find several pictures that will help you identify it. You'll also discover the little things you need to look for in order to be 100% sure that you've got the right plant and not a look-alike. This part goes extremely in-depth so that people with no plant knowledge at all can use it to its full potential. I gathered medicinal plants for my grandpa when I was just 12, and if I did it back then, I'm sure you can do it now. With hundreds of healing plants, I knew I had to find a way for people to quickly pinpoint the one that they need. So first I grouped them by type and location. If you're at home, just open the backyard weeds chapter to find what medicines you're growing around your yard without even realizing it. In addition to clear directions for the 3 remedies I've already shown you, you'll also find out about hundreds of other powerful medicines. I'm sure you'll recognize this common driveway weed. Even if you're living in the city, it's kind of hard not to bump into it. What you probably don't know is that it's a powerful anti-inflammatory that helps wounds heal a lot faster. I'll show you how to make poultice out of its leaves and how to use it to dress your wounds or cuts. Or if you or one of your friends is suffering from an autoimmune disease like arthritis, you can use this as a remedy immediately. Now, I'm pretty sure you would recognize a marshmallow, but maybe you wouldn't recognize the marshmallow plant growing in your backyard. But I'll show you how my grandfather unlocked the powerful antiviral properties hidden in its roots. So whenever you have an infection caused by a virus, like flu, herpes, or hepatitis A, B, or C, this remedy will slow down the virus's ability to reproduce and allow your body to fight back. This next hidden weed you'll find in your backyard is known as Seneca, and that's because the Seneca natives used a poultice made from it to cure deadly snake bites during the 18th century. A Scottish doctor observed that symptoms of rattlesnake bites resembled the advanced stages of pneumonia and lung disease, so he tried it out, and it was so effective that soon the plant was exported to Europe, where it continued to save many lives. My grandfather would turn it into an expectorant that cleared the lungs of his patients and expelled any mucus. So if you ever have any kind of lung problems from the flu or a nagging cough that just won't go away, don't rush out and buy a pack of Mucinex for $35. Just head out to your backyard instead and gather this plant just like my grandfather did. In this huge chapter, you'll find all the other medicinal weeds and backyard plants that are hidden around your property. You've got a homegrown pharmacy that you don't even know about, and most of these plants are edible and can provide you with precious nutrients if you ever run low on food. This goes for all the plants that you'll find in the Lost Book of Remedies. Not only will you learn what parts of the plants are edible, but I'll also show you how to prepare them. And in the second part, you'll discover how to identify the wild edibles and remedies that grow in forests. If you ever need to go out foraging, will you know which of these plants are edible, which one is a remedy for hypertension, and which ones are poisonous? The Native Americans knew all too well, and so did my grandfather. But very few people nowadays know, so don't feel bad if you don't. These kinds of skills will set you apart in any group, and will probably turn you into their guide or even savior. I'm also sure that you've seen this plant too. It grows in most forest glades. You'll discover how to use it effectively to treat not only common colds, but lung infections as well. Breathing in the steam from leaves that have been boiled in water will also calm any asthma attack. This is why 100 years ago, people with asthma didn't die from it. If you ever walk through the edges of woodland and get some sticky burrs attached to your clothing, you can bet you've just passed by this plant. The best way to deal with this annoying weed? Eat it. Native Americans used it as a sweetener 200 years ago, and it tastes better than all the greens I know. What people don't know is that this plant is a strong diuretic that you can also take for poor blood circulation. If you've ever felt a tingling and numbness sensation in a limb in certain positions, you probably have bad circulation. I've seen my grandfather's patients go from dizzy and tired most of the time to having an excess of energy in less than 3 weeks. In the third part, you'll discover how to identify the wild edibles and remedies that grow especially in the prairie. Most of these are spread all over America as well, like boneset, which can easily be turned into one of the most powerful antipyretics. This means that it drastically reduces the fever. In fact, the name boneset was derived from the plant's use in the treatment of breakbone fever. Now here's another widespread weed. The folk name of this plant is the cowboy's toilet paper. If you've ever touched its soft leaves, you'll understand why. And if you ever get an infected wound or cut, just apply the Frontier Poultice. You'll find it in my grandfather's notebook. I personally haven't seen a modern bandage that heals wounds faster and better than this. And I'll also show you the strange reason why putting a leaf of this plant in your shoes in the morning is as good as a cold shower and a cup of coffee. A similar weed called woolly lamb's ear can be added to the frontier poultice to stop the bleeding in a matter of seconds. This plant is high in vitamin K, the vitamin that coagulates the blood. It's the powdered vitamin that was given to soldiers in World War II to pour over their wounds if they were shot. My grandfather used it when the bandages ran out and his brothers in arms were bleeding to death. I hope you never find yourself looking down at a wound that just won't stop bleeding, but if you do, be sure the frontier poultice is your best shot, other than being in the ICU. And if you or a loved one has diabetes or problems with coagulation or wound healing, make sure you have this healing cataplasm around your home without delay. No matter where you live in America, there's a source of water nearby. And when there's water, there are cattails. If you find cattails, you'll have all the things needed for survival: water, food, shelter, and fuel. Now, you probably already know cattails are edible, but I doubt you know how tasty they are. I'll show you how to cook them in the field and at home, and how to turn them into flour. But probably the most important and least known thing about cattails is the jelly-like substance that grows between its leaves. Now, my grandfather prescribed it for most severe skin infections, and let me tell you, it's nothing short of a miracle. I've seen abscesses the size of a plate healing in just days. This gel is also one of the best cures for nail and foot fungus. Now, on a different note, this gel is the only part of the cattail that is widely considered to not be edible. That's not poisonous, so why isn't it edible? Well, because it has a powerful numbing effect on moist tissues. It's even been used as a Novocaine substitute, so yes, it's an anesthetic that you can use in many situations. But when the pioneers were hit with a ravaging toothache, they would just go and get their jar of cattail ooze and rub it around their gums, and the pain would subside in minutes. Another part of the Lost Book of Remedies comprises all the medicinal and edible trees in North America. And one of the things you'll find here is the ultimate survival tree that grows on almost every street in the U.S. I call it that because you can use the sap as medicine, its flowers as sleeping pills, its leaves as food, and the inner bark as cordage. You don't need much more than this to stay alive, but only a handful of people still know this lost skill. So if you're an old-timer like me or my grandfather, get ready to use this knowledge for its full potential. Do you recognize this tree? You might have even scraped yourself on one of its thorns as a child. The Native Americans would cook its honey-sweet pods and eat them. The sharp young spines were used as pins, nails, spear points, and animal trappings during the Civil War, when the South suffered many shortages. According to a recent medical study at Michigan State University, the flowers of this tree strongly prevent the spread and growth of prostate, breast, colon, and lung tumors. And you'll find all of these things in the Lost Book of Remedies. Really, there's too much to say here. There are hundreds of plants you'll find in my grandfather's book, and you'll learn how to turn them into powerful cures, medicines that in the past all originated from plants, until companies started making synthetic versions. This forgotten wisdom should be brought back. Today is your chance to play a role in doing that by putting the Lost Book of Remedies where it belongs, on your bookshelf and in your medicine cabinet. And finally, in the last chapter of the Lost Book of Remedies, you'll find the once common treatments our grandparents used whenever they were ill. These are the cures of my childhood, and if you've been here for a while, maybe yours as well. I'm talking about the common folk remedies that they used to bring down fever, cure a sore throat, banish the flu, and many more. They used only common household items that you probably have in your cupboard right this second. Just like the spice you add to your meals that can stop bleeding in just a matter of seconds. You'll also discover the one substance you probably overlooked and should add to your medicinal kit or stockpile. This detoxifying agent kills parasites and viruses in the digestive tract. Or the common household stain buster that can clear away most fungus and bacterial skin infections. But you can also use it to disinfect huge quantities of water, even in a well. It's much better than bleach, which leaves an odor for weeks. Now, as I've told you before, this is just a small glimpse of what you'll find in the Lost Book of Remedies. My grandfather's lifetime work is captured inside, but it's not just that. It's your grandparents' work too, and the generation before them. Over hundreds of years, they conducted the longest, largest, and most honest clinical trial ever. It's one that pharmaceutical companies' self-funded clinical trials rarely match. With big money on the line, they need these trials to validate their drugs. That's why many pills on the market today have a minimal effect or no effect at all. If you get the Lost Book of Remedies today, you'll also be able to take advantage of 2 exclusive gifts that will be off the table soon. The first report you'll get is the 80 square feet medicinal garden in your backyard. Wouldn't it be nice to walk out in your own backyard and find the medicine you need growing right there? If you think about it, 80 square feet is a small piece of land. It's only 10 feet by 8 feet. So no matter how small your backyard is, you can grow your own natural remedies there. I'll show you how to make a raised garden bed, just like mine, with the most effective medicinal plants you need, as well as how to plant and harvest them. You'll have the ingredients from my grandfather's remedies within reach, so your medicinal garden will stand toe-to-toe with any conventional pharmacy. And the second report you'll get is called Disaster Medicine, a handbook for when help is not on the way. In a cataclysmic crisis, you can bet help is not coming from anyone but yourself. In this bonus, you'll find the 20 most common infections and diseases that you could catch during a crisis, and you'll learn how to diagnose and how to treat them. In a crisis, they'll account for 95% of medical fatalities. And all of that is just scratching the surface of what this bonus has in store for you. If you choose to place the Lost Book of Remedies in your bookshelf, you'll also get these 2 exclusive bonuses that are worth $29 each for free, and unlimited access to the members area, where you can ask me anything at any time. I'll be there to answer your questions and to help you out if you need any clarification on anything. With the Lost Book of Remedies, you'll also save money on healthcare. Just think how much you spend each year on drugs. The average American forks out about $800 a year on pills, so that's like a $66 recurrent subscription every month for life. And it gets more expensive as you age. In addition, a 15-minute consultation with a general practitioner will set you back around $100 with insurance and $200 or more without it. I didn't want the Lost Book of Remedies to be anywhere near that. I know I could charge a lot more than a 15-minute consultation, and it would still be a bargain. But I know my grandfather would want to see it in the hands of as many people as possible. So today you can get your copy of the Lost Book of Remedies and the 2 bonuses for a one-time payment of just $37. And the only way to get it is to click the Add to Cart button below now. Now, this offer really can't get any better than this. You'll have all my grandfather's healing knowledge at your fingertips. With it, you'll not only secure your peace of mind, but also your free health insurance for the next few decades. Now, I'm not a rich man or a corporation, so I was only able to print the Lost Book of Remedies in a very limited edition with considerable personal effort and expense. And the only promise I can really make is that you'll get one if you order now. Now, as I told you, my grandfather had lots of patients, and I expect that they'll all want at least 1 copy. So I really don't know at this moment if there are any more copies available. But if you're still able to see the order button below this video, then it means I still have at least 1 copy left. So just scroll down, and if you can see it, click on it and fill in your address. The Lost Book of Remedies will help you achieve medical self-sufficiency even in the darkest times using the time-tested methods of our grandparents, all without spending lots of money on toxic drugs and without any side effects. And at the same time, the Lost Book of Remedies will be like having my grandfather care for you and your family in the next crisis. Pharmacy chains are incredibly vulnerable to economic collapses, looters, and everything else that a devastating event brings. So medicines will vanish. Just look at what happened after Hurricane Katrina when people were dying in hospitals from easily preventable diseases. But plants aren't going anywhere fast. They've been here for hundreds of millions of years and will still be here long after we're all gone. Most of us are not used to facing medical emergencies. It seems like a distant possibility, and I surely hope so, but in the long run, there is no escape from it. I wouldn't want you to kick yourself for not having the Lost Book of Remedies when you need it most, and I surely don't want the price to be an issue. So my promise to you is this. You have a full 60 days to try out my grandfather's Book of Remedies. Go through it at your own pace and discover all the miraculous plants and remedies found within it. And if at any time during those 60 days you're not completely satisfied with the results, send me an email and I'll give you back every single cent. It's as simple as that. And also, if you use the Lost Book of Remedies to replace current drugs and you don't end up saving at least $37, I'll send you a full refund, no questions asked. That's my personal guarantee to you. Life is all about choices, and until today, you didn't have one. You were in the same boat with millions of other Americans relying on expensive and toxic drugs. Now you'll have an alternative for everything in your medicine cabinet and a second chance at life when the medical system collapses. With my grandfather's cures, you'll never owe your life and well-being to a pill bottle ever again. Nature has an answer for everything: heart disease, diabetes, Alzheimer's, chronic pain, arthritis, even cancer. Now, I'm talking about medical self-sufficiency and stepping out of the lifelong drug rat race that Big Pharma has us all running to line their pockets. And it wasn't possible before, until the Lost Book of Remedies. And it may never be possible again if you decide to miss out on this unique opportunity. It's all up to you. So I hope you make the right choice and click the order button below now. Your future self will surely thank you for the foresight that you had today. The greatest generation didn't expect anything from anyone but themselves. That's how they managed to build America into one of the greatest nations on earth. Self-sufficiency has been diminishing with every generation since, and it's under attack from all sides. So think for yourself, act accordingly to your own judgment, and learn to never depend on anyone else. You'll never go wrong that way, and if you want proof, just think about your grandparents or parents. Remember the time when your father taught you how to swim or ride a bicycle, or the first day of school when your mother took you by the hand to kindergarten and you felt alone, but she knew you'd be okay without her? Because without realizing it, this was their main objective in life, to show you how to stand on your own 2 feet. That's what you do for people that you truly love. You teach them how to be all right even when you're no longer by their side. It's called tough love. And this is what we should do for the next generation. No matter how shallow we think they are, one day they'll say that we were right all along. Just like we realized our parents were. Maybe a little too late, but we all did. We need to put our trust in the future generation too. We have to stop keeping them close, and in doing so, making them dependent on us, just like so many Americans are doing today. Instead, we should give them the gift of self-reliance. My grandfather's plant journal, The Lost Book of Remedies, is just a tiny but very important bit of the legacy that we need to save from our grandparents and pass on to our children and grandchildren. This knowledge of plants will soon be lost forever, like my grandfather's great generation, like your grandfather's generation as well, and just like ours someday. If you can still see the button below, click on it and reserve your copy now before they're gone. In a crisis, when my family looks at me for help and guidance, I'm not going to say, let's just wait for help. No matter how ugly things get, I'll still be able to provide security, shelter, food, water, and above all, medicine for my loved ones. Because if you don't have your health, the rest is useless. And when it hits, don't expect the government to come rushing to your aid. There are many millions of people in that queue already. A great president once said, "The most terrifying words in the English language are, 'I'm from the government and I'm here to help.'" Our forefathers didn't rely on Uncle Sam's charity, and they prospered. In fact, they did better than most of us do today. They were self-sufficient and had everything they needed to survive, from foods in their pantry and cellar to natural remedies in their cabinets. And you may be thinking that there were also some phony folk remedies out there that didn't work, and sure, there have been a few snake oil salesmen back in the day. That's why my grandfather researched and extensively tested every single one of the cures he discovered. Only the very best made their way into his book of remedies. And just like my grandfather before me, I've done everything in my power to save our forefathers' cures in the Lost Book of Remedies. Now I'll meet you in just a second on our secure checkout page that makes use of the highest level of data encryption so that you can rest assured that your data will be safe. I've made everything there as simple and clear as possible. All you need to do is fill in your details. And once you do that and click on the yellow order button, I'll personally make sure you receive your very own copy of The Lost Book of Remedies in a few days. You'll never need anything else to stay healthy, and you'll be able to cure whatever ails you right now or in the future. So just keep it close on your bookshelf and consult it regularly. Thank you for watching. God bless and good health.